Hey everyone, welcome back to the Visually Stunning Movie Podcast. Thank you for joining us. We are joined today by writer, director, actor, terminal triple threat, Miles Doleac, who we have spoken with before for one of his previous movies, The Historian, which we loved. And he has come back to talk to us about his latest called Demigod. Miles, how are you this morning?
I'm doing very well, sir. How are you?
Not too bad. It's a little chilly here out in the Mountain West region. We might get snow on the valley floor by tomorrow, which it's a little early, but it shouldn't be too much, but it'll just remind everyone what's coming. And hopefully they don't forget how to drive when it arrives.
Well, I wish it were a little chillier here in muggy New Orleans, but we're starting to get a little taste of fall. So
yes, a little taste of fall, as I recall from my time in beautiful Biloxi, Mississippi.
Yeah.
Yes, 90 degrees, 90%. I remember those numbers well. But yeah, it'll drop what, all the way down to about 82, I think, come fall, won't it?
Quite possibly.
Oh, I don't know. Get out the parka. Well, again, thanks for coming back on. Enjoyed having you last time. We had a really long and rambling conversation, mostly because of me last time. So we'll try to keep it on topic. Demigod is this, the longer it's been since I watched it a couple weeks ago. I want to just, it's just it's not quite a fairy tale. It's not quite just like a mythological tale. It's this weird hybrid between where did this Black Forest of Germany story come from?
Well, the mythos of the Black Forest is absolutely fascinating. The spirits and the goblins and the forest sprites are replete in Black Forest lore and mythology, as is this notion of the wild hunt, which is typically governed by the Germanic god Herni, whose name is cognatic with our Cernunnos. So this is the same producing team that did our last film, The Dinner Party. And in the wake of that film, we wanted to do another project together. Really enjoyed working with that team. And so very quickly, we wanted to get something together to capitalize on the momentum that we had with Dinner Party. And my co-writer on Dinner Party, Mike Donovan Horn, had this wild hunt script. I think it was called Witches of the Wild Woods or something at the time. And he sent it to me. And I thought the bones were good. But it needed some character work. It needed a stronger hook. And as it turns out, as we started looking at it, myself and my partner in life and art, Lindsay, who's also a producer on this, it began with explicitly naming the deity who was in charge of this whole thing, Cernunnos. And Cernunnos is a vegetation deity, and vegetation deities are badass. They are the guardians of the earth and the ability of human beings to grow things in it and to muster the beasts of the field, which things are, of course, integral to human beings' very survival.
Absolutely.
And so, when you cross a vegetation deity, it's really bad news. And when you cross the natural realm, the vegetation deity gets very, very upset. And so I thought that was an interesting opening to talk about a lot of things, man's relationship to nature and so on and so on. And so we just started polishing and mythology, ritual, religion, cult. This is a sandbox I really enjoy playing in, based on my PhD work in the ancient world, as we've discussed before.
Oh yeah.
And then we also saw an opportunity to say something about family and lineage and generational trauma and daughters and granddaughters who fall under the spell of controlling, imposing patriarchal figures like Karl, Robin's grandfather, and then of course our younger heroine Amalia. And then when we got the script to a place we felt good about, and we were foolhardy enough to try to shoot it during the pandemic. Brave enough or foolhardy enough, I don't know. But I liked the limited locations, limited cast. I knew that, strangely enough, the forests, the piney woods of my home state of Mississippi resemble pretty closely the Black Forest in their penchant for evergreens, pines and spruce and fir and all that kind of stuff. So we had a pretty good analogy, I think, for the Black Forest and where we shot it in Lumberton, Mississippi. Can't say it wasn't a harrowing experience. Probably was the hardest film we've shot to date. But I am really pleased with how it turned out.
Yeah, I was going to ask when it was shot. So this was a COVID production then.
We shot it in December of 2020, right smack in the middle of COVID, and in the middle of one of the coldest Mississippi winters I can remember. Before we
75 degrees?
Yeah. No, it literally got down into the 20s. I know we were talking about how muggy it is down here in the deep South, but there were a couple of nights it got down into the 20s. It was just some bone-chilling cold, and the vast majority of the film is exterior. So of course, COVID posed a great many logistical and budgetary challenges to our film, certainly on an indie budget, right? We're testing 3 or 4 times a week, sanitation protocols, HEPA filtration in our interior locations. We're following the guidelines of the right to work agreement handed down by SAG and DGA and Writers Guild. And we had a scare. We had a scare where an actor flew in from LA, tested positive for COVID before coming to set, thank God. So the protocols worked. We wound up having to juggle the cast and shake some things up in the middle of production because there's no option to push on an indie budget. You got to make it work. You got to keep moving forward. And as it turned out, I think ultimately, as much as we hated to lose that actor, it turned out in the best interest of the film. It resulted in the elevation of Elena Sanchez in particular to the role of Latara. And Elena is fluent in German, as it turns out.
Handy.
She has a German parent. So we had a German dialect coach out of New York, Oliver Hoffer, who's an absolute gem, but he couldn't travel because of COVID. And so we had him remotely, and now we had Elena on the ground. We're all sequestered at this campground in Lumberton, Mississippi. And when she wasn't shooting, she was just like, hey, let me come to set. Let me listen to the German, listen to the dialect, make sure you guys are on point with it. So she was such an incredible addition to the project. She's also an accomplished stunt woman. And that came, without giving any spoilers, has a major stunt at the end of this film, and she dove in with both feet and was eager to do it. So sometimes these things work out for the best.
So yeah, it really did. I was kind of, in the back of my mind, I kind of saw there was a lot of spread out action. Even when there were multiple actors in scene, I could see that we were kind of spread out. And so that's why I was kind of curious as to when it was shot. And so I'm sure that kind of played, even when everyone is bound up and tied up at one point. All the trees, the trees conveniently do not grow right next to one another.
Yeah.
So they kind of helped out in that aspect of it. I noticed. Now we talked about the mythology and the Black Forest mythology, witches, and specifically in threes. We get that portion of this. I like to talk about creature design. If there's a major creature, I did like the creature design in this. Who did your creature work for you?
So that was primarily the work of Julie Tosh, our production designer, who we worked with on our last 3 films now. She has a lot of experience in makeup world. And then Ashley Treadaway, our makeup department head, and Lindsay, who designed Karanunos' wardrobe. So it was these 3 really, really talented, brilliant women came together on that. And, we knew we couldn't go hog wild because we just didn't have the budget to do so. So we had to choose our battles with regard to the Karanunos design.
Right.
We wanted to make him more primal and more, I guess, animal than he is typically depicted. He's typically depicted as a human with a long beard and antlers and long flowing robes. So this Karanunos, we wanted to be a real hunter, real sort of warrior type, and he's got this broadsword and crossbow and cuirass, and so we diverged a little bit from the typical look of Karanunos for that reason. Also, I kind of had this idea that Karanunos, each time he's reborn, he continues to evolve and improve as the environment changes and as technology changes. He is after all a half divine figure, and is able to sort of muster all the natural forces at animist forces at his disposal.
Right.
So yeah, and it also helped to have an actor like Chima Chekwa, who has this incredible imposing physicality that he brought to the proceeding. Chima comes from the stunt world. So we knew that was going to come into play, and we thought about that as we cast the role as well. But yeah, big shout out to Julie Tosh in particular for the design.
Yeah, it's not completely primitive, but it's not obviously I mean, it is a very nice mix, and I did want to point that out, because to let you know that I personally appreciated that. I've seen some creatures where you're just like, oh, it's just a bad design, or it's a good design and a bad implementation. I think you got the best of both worlds. So kudos there. So the story we've got here in Demigod is Rachel Nichols, not ESPN, as she likes to put in her Twitter bio. You got her. She plays our lead, Robin, who inherits her grandfather's cabin / house out in the Black Forest. And unlike some stories, she's not unfamiliar with this. She kind of grew up there. A lot of times you get I didn't ever know my grandfather because, or whatever. So it was nice that she was going back someplace instead of discovering a place. She's rediscovering that part of her childhood, and she meets your character in the woods, Arthur, out in the woods, who was a friend of her, or who knew her grandfather. And that's when we get the introduction into this the supernatural world that's going on here. And like in any good horror / supernatural type film, things tend to degrade quickly for our protagonist, but no, overall, like I said, I liked the feel of it. When it got to the end and it said it was shot in Mississippi, I was like, well, I was fairly certain you didn't fly to Germany. I was like,
no, not on our budget.
I was fairly certain you didn't fly to Germany, but I was like, wow, I hadn't realized that it was that close, because there were just a couple spots where I'm like, is it really just kind of open up like that when there's a forest line? But I was like, okay, you know what, I'll let that one go. But overall, I was like, oh, I'm good with that. And then it was like Mississippi. I'm like, holy crap. It's like, I can live with that. I like like I said, I like the creature design. I like the general flow. I think your characters, you put the character work in, as you said earlier. I think that shows, because I can see a version of this story that's very flat. I have probably seen a version of this story that's very flat, truth be told. And the creature design is excellent. And I think your actors all portrayed really well. Really quick, let's talk about Amalia.
Okay.
Played by Rachel Ryals. Where did you find her? Because she's a lovely young girl. And she just really kind of encapsulates this she's an innocent little hunter girl, which is just this weird combination of things. Where did you find her, and how was she for you on set?
So Rachel Ryals had played a very small role in our previous film, The Dinner Party. She played the younger version of our lead character, Haley, in that. And Rachel and her mother, Regina, are both just absolutely wonderful human beings. And, we knew that working with a minor would be another challenge on this film with the long nights. And, you can't work a minor 12 hours. And, so we managed to hand ourselves all kinds of logistical challenges based on when we shot it, where we shot it, who we shot it with. But she was so game. She was so great. And of course, Rachel Ryals went into this not speaking a lick of German. So she worked very hard with our dialect coach, Ollie Hopper, and then later with Elena on set to get the German right. And, in the early drafts of the script, that character was a boy. And we just felt it wasn't right. And, I thought about Newton Ripley and Aliens, and I thought about this, the connection, the feminine connection and bond between mothers and daughters that then would play out ultimately between Robin and Amalia. Kind of going back to some of the themes I was talking about earlier with generational trauma and lineage and daughters and fathers. And, but yeah, Rachel is from right there in Mississippi. And she's done a fair amount of stuff. She was on the Cloak and Dagger TV series, at Marvel TV series. But I just kind of, I don't even think we really thought too hard about this because we had worked with Rachel on Dinner Party. And so in the very early discussions, when we decided this would be Amalia, we would make it her a girl. Rachel's name came up very, very quickly. And we also knew that Regina, her mom, is just awesome. And we knew Regina would come to set, and we knew we would have to be sequestered. So we would need a parent that was going to be there the whole time. And it just made so much sense for our project. And man, I'm glad we were able to get Rachel on this one.
Well, yeah, it sounds like you had a couple of serendipitous falls this time, which is, sometimes it is better to be lucky than good.
Yep.
And I think you got both this time. So kudos again to everyone. No, she's wonderful. She's a nice parallel for Robin, Robin's character. Amalia is your daughter in the film.
Yes.
So that was, you guys played together well as well. So the film is going to open in select cities in theaters this Friday, October 15th. And I'll have a list of those cities in the write-ups, and you can go and find them. Now, what are the release plans beyond that? Is this going to be a streaming release? Are we hoping for a wider theaters?
Yeah, well, I mean, we're always hoping for a wider theatrical release.
Yeah,
we'll see how it does, and we're being distributed by Gravitas Ventures, and they'll ultimately make that call. But it will be available everywhere on demand on all of the transactional VOD sites on Friday. So iTunes, Amazon, Google Play, Fandango Now, all those guys.
So this Friday as well, the 15th.
Yeah,
okay.
Exactly.
Good.
But I mean, I highly encourage your listening audience, if you can see it in the theater and you feel comfortable doing so, if you're in one of those cities, try to see it in the theater. We shot it to be seen on the biggest screen possible. We shot an anamorphic widescreen. It really deserves to be seen on a big screen with quality sound. So even if you don't get to the theater, watch it on your largest TV with the sound blazing.
There you go. I encourage everyone to see everything in the theaters if I can. It's nice. We're back to seeing a lot of bigger movies in the theater. This week is actually going to be fairly heavy. And next week is going to be fairly heavy too, because there's a lot of good stuff coming out. But don't forget, just because Hollywood's giving us the big stuff, people, there are smaller films that deserve to be seen, sometimes more so than some of those big Hollywood films. But either way, the theaters those are the lifeblood. And without those, a lot of this stuff doesn't happen at all. So support your theaters if you can and if you feel comfortable. That is where I will leave my preaching on theater attendance and safety, because people get crazy. What's next first before we wrap up? What's next for you?
Lindsay and I have just completed a new script, which is sort of a bonkers character drama, quasi musical, going back to our roots a little bit in that realm with the historian, but 180 degrees in the opposite direction in terms of its sensibility.
Right.
So it's like I call it it's if you took a Noah Baumbach film like Marriage Story or Squid and the Whale and mixed it with a Wong Kar-wai film like In the Mood for Love or 2046, a Wes Anderson film, put it in a blender, then put some really cool 1980s first wave music videos in there, like Duran Duran or Flock of Seagulls or something. That's this movie. And we already have Jeremy London attached to that one. Jeremy has been in our last two in smaller roles, but he's been really pushing me to write a lead. So we did write a lead for him in that one. So we hope to shoot that one sometime next year. And then also, doing a little bit more freelance producing a film called Mind Reader that's shooting in very soon here, late October, November, in Hattiesburg and Laurel, Mississippi. And then, smattering of acting gigs here and there, and then holding down the old day job at Loyola University teaching film, which is one of the best day jobs on the planet.
I'll bet it is. There's probably worse ways to spend your day.
Yeah.
So excellent. Well, Miles, thanks for taking the time. I highly encourage everyone to seek out Demigod, whether in theaters or your streaming platform of choice. I will not endorse one over the other. I have many. But definitely check it out. That's this Friday, October 15th. Like I said, the list of cities that will have it in select theaters will be with the write-up for this, so go ahead and check that list out. Thank you so much again for joining. I do appreciate it.
Thank you for supporting indie film.
Well, 100%. I know a lot of guys, and I know there's a lot of good work comes out of the indie scene. So thanks again. Until we talk again, because I'm sure we will talk again about your next project at some point, and feel free to reach out whenever you want to talk about it. Just tap me right there, and I'll get back to you as quick as I can. But until we talk to Miles again, and until I and Ryan get back to you with some bigger films, don't forget to like us, follow us on social media at VS Movie Podcast. You know the drill. And we will talk to everyone later. Bye, Miles. Bye, everyone.